There's a single syllable in this E. Cummings poem I thought about maybe more than any other syllable I've ever read. Also, I remember today we have 2 complete poems of E. Cummings because my wife and I accidentally both got it for each other one Christmas. It's funny to say anything by way of analysis about this poem because it opens with this ostensible admonition against overanalysis. Since feeling is first, who pays any attention to the syntax of things will never wholly kiss you. Holy to be a fool while spring is in the world. This is slightly ironic because there's no one who pays more attention to syntax than E. Cummings. The syllable in question comes just after the 3rd stanza break. The best gesture of my brain is less than your eyelids flutter, which says... And then, how do you pronounce the word R in the next line? I've listened to dozens of recordings and performances of this poem, and most people tend to emphasize the we and the for. But the first time I read this poem, I felt the variable rhythm and stanza break leading up to the line suggested a different reading, which says we are for each other, where instead of the straight trochaic, we are for each other, the emphasis lands on the are. One of the difficult things about poetry in English is where a stress should land. One of my favorite poets, Gerard Manley Hopkins, tried to mitigate this problem by actually developing his own system. He would literally mark words he wanted you to emphasize in cases where the stress was ambiguous. Parsing the rhythm and stress of a line is a practice called scansion, and I've seen this poem scanned different ways. In this case, how you read the line actually slightly changes the emphasis or meaning of the poem. We are for each other has this kind of stress on the forness of this relationship between 2 people, which is, a pretty common sentiment. But we are for each other shifts the meaning towards this idea of literally existing for one another. And this is a kind of philosophical, even theological idea we find in a lot of Cummings poems, like anyone lived in a pretty how town. The reason I've thought about the syllable so much isn't because it represents a particularly difficult problem, but because this was maybe the line that got me into poetry when I was a young student. Lots of poets seem to have origin stories about the one line or one word they encountered that made them fall in love. Geoffrey Hill, one of my favorites, cites the word sucking that's broken over the line ending, and W.H. Auden's look stranger as the 2 syllables that got him into the art. This is one of my favorite questions to ask people, especially students. So if there's a single word or a single line that made you fall in love with poetry, let us know.